So our next couple learning objectives or learning goals. First one is that I want you to be able to use a basic Spanish greeting using the words hello and good morning, good afternoon, or good night in Spanish. I want you to be able to ask other people what their name is and tell them what your name is. And then we're going to learn some common or simple or common manners based off some manners I learned in Ecuador, but I know that the things I'm going to teach you there, I've heard people from other countries use it as well. So for our greeting this week, okay, we will do, we'll change these greetings to other greetings over time, but for this week, the greeting is going to be, I will say hola, okay, which I'm guessing most of you know what that means. That means hello or hi. But I'll say hola, and then I want you to respond to it the correct way. Now, just so you know, with a lot of these, there's going to be lots of ways you can respond to it. But the really easy, simple way to respond to hola is to just say hola back. Okay, so I'll say hola, you will say hola, and then I will say one of these. For the next part, you can either say buenos dias, buenas tardes, or buenas noches. Okay, buenos dias means good morning, buenas tardes means good afternoon, buenas noches means good night. Okay, now just so you know the way those work, technically, according to textbooks and things like that, buenos dias you would use from when you wake up in the morning until 12 o'clock noon. So as you're going around greeting people during those times, you'd say buenos dias. From 12 o'clock noon until about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, you would say buenas tardes. And then from 6 o'clock in the afternoon until you go to bed, you would say buenas noches. Okay? So from when you get up till noon, buenos dias. From noon until 6 o'clock, buenas tardes. From 6 o'clock until you go to bed, buenas noches. Okay? So I'll say hola, you'll say hola. For now, I'm just going to pick one of these. Okay, let's say buenos dias. Now, this one works kind of the same way as hola. If I say buenos dias, an easy way to respond to that is you're going to say buenos dias. You're just going to repeat it back. Okay, it's like I say good morning, you say good morning. Okay, so hola, hola, buenos dias. You'll say buenos dias. Okay, after that, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to say, ¿Cómo te llamas? Or, ¿Cómo se llama? Okay, now both of these, the reason I have both those there, they both mean the exact same thing. Okay, both of those literally mean how yourself do you call. Okay, ¿Cómo means how, te means yourself, llama basically means call, and the as ending on it, llamas, that as part means do you. It basically means, tells you that it's you doing it. Okay, so how yourself do you call? Same thing here. The como means how, se means yourself, yam would be call, and the a ending, the a right there, is also do you. Okay, so literally, como te llamas, como se llama, both those mean how yourself do you call. However, in English, the way we would say those is what is your name. Okay, como te llamas would mean what is your name. Como se llama would mean what is your name. Now, the reason I'm giving you two of them right there is because in Spanish there are actually two different U's. Okay, Y-O-U, U's. And that anytime you're doing something with you, so you, your, yourself, like here you have yourself, you have your, anyway, anytime it's any of those, anything with having to do with you. Okay, so you, your, yourself. There's going to be two options in Spanish. Okay, what the deal is they have what is called an informal you, an informal you, and then they have a different one that's called a formal you. Okay. Basically, what that means is when you're addressing someone and calling them you, you're like talking directly to that person. You can either talk to them in a formal way or in an informal way. Okay, depending on the way you say the phrase. Okay. So in this example, ¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo se llama? If you're trying to be informal with the person you're talking to, you'd use that first one. You'd say ¿Cómo te llamas? Okay. And then if you're trying to be formal to the person you're talking to, you'd use this one. You'd say ¿Cómo se llama? Okay. Now, just a quick side note on that. For if you're just beginning with Spanish, I would probably stick with the formal one just to be safe. You know, that's always the safer bet. It's always safer as far as not offending people and things like that. It's usually safer to stick with the formal one if you're not sure which one to use. Okay. Now, a side note on that sometimes will sound funny to native speakers when you're using the formal one. Like if it's supposed to be the informal one and you're saying it the formal way, it'll kind of sound funny to them, or you'll sound kind of really, like overly formal sometimes. But usually people will not be offended by that. Okay, but if you're supposed to be using the formal one and you use this one, you use the informal one, some people do get offended by that. Okay, so you do have to be a little bit careful there. When I first was learning Spanish and I lived in Ecuador, I was there as a missionary for my church. We were told to always use the formal. Okay, so the whole time I was there, the whole 2 years I was there as a missionary, I always talked to everybody in the formal, even when it was supposed to be informal. Let me try to be quick and explain how that works. The informal you use basically with people you know super well, if it's like really close friends. Sometimes with family members you use it. Sometimes if you're talking to little kids, like if you're the older person, if you're like an adult talking to a little kid, you do that. Sometimes like where there's a difference in, like, I don't know, seniority or authority in the relationship. So like a boss talking to an employee might use the informal. Okay. Or like a teacher talking to a student might use the informal. Okay. And then those are reversed for the formal. That would be things like if you are an employee and you're talking to your boss, okay, you'd want to be formal when you talk to him. So if you're asking his or her name, you'd say ¿Cómo se llama? In that case, instead of ¿Cómo te llamas? Okay. Or like a student talking to a teacher, or a teacher talking to the principal, or like a little kid talking to an adult. All those times, those people, in those situations, you'd want to use the formal and say ¿Cómo se llama? Okay? All right. So, anyway, I would say hola, you would say hola. If I say buenos dias, you're going to say buenos dias. If I'm being informal, I'd say ¿Cómo te llamas? If I'm being formal, I'd say ¿Cómo se llama? To either of these questions, no matter if they're saying it to you the informal way or the formal way, the way you respond is the same. You're going to say me llamo, and then fill in the blank with your name. Okay, now literally, me means myself, yam would kind of means call, and the o ending part means I do it. Okay, in the present, I do it in the present tense. So llamo means I call. Okay, so me llamo literally means myself I call. It's kind of like saying I call myself. Okay. However, the way this translates to English is my name is blank. Okay. Now the reason for that is just because that's the way we say it in English. Okay. We don't ever say to people, myself I call Mr. Ricks, right? We would say my name is Mr. Ricks. Okay. So anyway, me llamo blank. If you want to, just memorize it this way, the way we'd say it in English. My name is, okay? So me llamo blank, my name is blank, okay? Let me give you one little piece of advice on this one, because I hear this mistake a lot as a Spanish teacher. A lot of people want to add the word S right there. They want to say me llamo S and then their name, okay? Now that is totally incorrect in Spanish. Sounds really funny. Okay. It's like a dead giveaway that you're not fluent in Spanish if you say it that way. Okay. Because, like I said, literally what this means is I call myself. Okay. It's not my name is. Okay. The reason they put the S there is they think they're saying my name is, even though, you know, that's what it translates to in English, but that's not what you're saying in Spanish. In Spanish, you're saying I call myself. Okay. So when you add the S in there, it'd be like saying I call myself is Mr. Ricks instead of I call myself Mr. Ricks. Okay. All right. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay. So I would say, ¿Cómo te llamas? Or ¿Cómo se llama? You would answer with me llamo. If your name is Bob, you'd put Bob right there. Me llamo Bob. Okay. Now, for a manners thing I'm going to teach you. In Ecuador, where I lived when I learned Spanish, before you would walk into someone's house, just to be polite, to have good manners, kind of as a custom there, before you go in, you would say con permiso. Okay. Literally what that means, the word con means with, permiso means permission. Okay. So it's like you're saying with permission. It's kind of in English, I would say it's kind of like saying like may I come in, or do I have permission to come in? Okay, notice that in Spanish it's not a question. Okay, because and you don't, I don't know, it's almost like you don't have to say this to walk into someone's house. It's just, and it's not like you're asking a question. You're just saying like I'm trying to be polite with permission. Okay. Anyway, so con permiso. Okay. And then you'd say con permiso. After that, the person at the door, if it's me, Senor Ricks, I would say pase. Okay, literally what that means is pass. But it's kind of like saying like, yes, you can go in. Okay, it's just a response to con permiso. If they say con permiso, you say pase, right? It's like they're saying, may I come in? And you're saying, yes, you can come in. Okay, but literally they're saying with permission, and you're saying pass. Okay, all right, so let's run through that one more time. So I'm going to say hola, you would say hola. Good. If I say buenos dias, you would say buenos dias. Good. If I say ¿cómo te llamas?, you would say me llamo, and then fill in that blank with your name. Okay. Or if I said ¿cómo se llama?, you would also say me llamo, and then fill in the blank with your name. Okay. And then before you would walk through the door, you would say con permiso. Good. And then I would say pase. Okay. Now, just so you know, there are other things they might say in response to con permiso. Okay. This is just a really common one you'll hear a lot, but there's other things they might say. So don't let that throw you off. Okay. All right. So sorry, I want to do something real quick. Let's run through this one last time. I want you to try to respond before I show you on here what you're supposed to say. Okay, so I'll say my part, and then you try to say your part without any help if you can. Hola. Good. You would say hola. Buenos dias. Good. You would say buenos dias. And if on that part, if I say buenas tardes, good, you would say buenas tardes. Good. Or if I said buenas noches, good, you would say buenas noches. Okay. After that, if I say ¿cómo te llamas?, good, you would say me llamo, and then your name. Like me llamo Senor Ricks is what I would say. Okay. On that part, if I say ¿cómo se llama?, then I would say that way to be formal with you. Okay. If I say ¿cómo se llama?, then you would say me llamo, and fill in the blank with your name. Like if your name is Susie, you'd say me llamo Susie. Okay. And then after that, you would say, to be polite before you walk through the door, good, you would say con permiso. Con permiso. Okay. After you say con permiso, I would say, or might say, good, pase. I would say pase. And then you would walk through the door. Okay, good.